Hello again, welcome to today's upload. My name is Stacey, I'm a mess in a dress, and today, drum roll please, I have finally got round to filming a weekly reading wrap up. So I've been saying since like March that I was going to try and do this to try and cut down on the length of these videos and also the number of books I have to talk about, and I've never got around to it, but here we are. So this will feature all of the books that I've read from the 1st to the 6th of June. And I'm really hoping this means that this video will be much shorter than normal and will also be a little bit easier for me to remember the character names because I do struggle with that sometimes. So let's get started. Book 1 of this month, the first book that I read in June, was Born Darkly by Trisha Wolfe, and this was, I can't remember where I saw this, it was on someone's Instagram stories, and I have been in a real dark romance mood recently. I don't know why, it just happens now and again. I just want something really dark, something twisty, something that makes me feel all conflicted about whether or not I should be liking it, and Born Darkly was 100% that. If you saw my recent wrap up of May, you will know that I read the Mindfucked series, which was a kind of Dexter, Criminal Minds kind of romance. This was more Saw. It was brutal. So basically you have London, who is a criminal psychologist who studies serial killers and their behaviour and seeks to rehabilitate them. She meets Grayson, who is a serial killer who has killed lots of people in a very Saw-like fashion. He picks out people who he considers to be criminals or bad guys who have escaped justice, and he forces them to undergo tests, which if they choose to live through these horrific experiences, then they can live. If they don't, they die. It doesn't end well for most of his victims. It's grim. I will say now, some of the scenes in this book are described in hideously graphic detail and are definitely not for everybody. This romance is probably not for everybody. It is one of the darkest things I've ever read. London and Grayson have this strange, sinister connection between the two of them. They both are trying to get something out of the relationship. They both have ulterior motives, but at the same time there is a definite chemistry between them, and they are drawn to each other, and it's kind of sexy and creepy and all of the rest of the things you would expect from a dark romance. This was so good. This is also their first part in a duet. This book ends, it's not really on a cliffhanger, because you could probably read this book and then not go on to the second one. So far I haven't read the second book, but if you want to see how their HEA happens, if that's even possible for these two people, then you would need to read the second book. This isn't a standalone. There are some serious twists and turns from both characters. You find out plenty of stuff that you didn't know when you start the book. There are also some very deep psychological ideals that go behind it, a lot of questioning about what makes humanity behave the way it does. It's a fascinating book. It is quite deep for a dark romance. It really does make you think. I really enjoyed it. I haven't read book 2 yet, and the main reason for that is I think I've fallen out of my dark romance phase, and it's really hard to read this kind of book if you're not in that mood. So I need to wait for me to get back into dark romance mood, and then I will definitely be finishing this series. So next up, I put an Instagram poll up because I was really struggling to decide what I wanted to read next, and I gave them 4 choices. I can't remember all 4 of them, but 2 that were basically neck and neck when the results came out were Mating the Huntress by Talia Hibbert and Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I couldn't pick between the 2, so I read them both. First up was Mating the Huntress by Talia Hibbert. This is a short paranormal novella. I've read Talia Hibbert's Brown Sisters series and absolutely loved them. I was not expecting a paranormal romance to come from this author, and this was amazing. As I may have mentioned a few times in the past, I love Cressy Cole's books, and I have never, ever yet found another author who writes paranormal romance that I find as gripping, as exciting, and as sexy as Cressy Cole does. Kerrigan Byrne came close with the Highland Magic series, but Cressy Cole is up there on a pedestal all by herself. Talia Hibbert, if she wrote a full-length novel of paranormal romance, could possibly push her off. I adored this book. Basically, we have our heroine, who is a werewolf huntress. She comes from a line of werewolf hunters, and she is well aware that this stranger that keeps coming into her cafe every week is in fact a werewolf, and she sets out to kill him. He meanwhile has realised that she is in fact his mate, and he is trying to court her in the most civilised, gentlemanly way you can imagine for someone who is literally a beast in disguise. I absolutely loved this. It was so sweet, it was so funny, it was so sexy, it just hit every single button. I absolutely adored it. I so wish it had been longer because it was just perfect. Please Talia Hibbert, write me some more paranormal romance because I am living for it. It was amazing. So then, as I said, I went on to read Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, and I'd heard... Excuse me? We're recording here. This is what happens when you live on a main road, you see. And I've got to have the windows open because it's so warm today. Shut up. So next up, as I said, I went on to read Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, and I'd heard this one spoken about a lot, so I knew it was an age gap romance, and I'd expected it to be a little, maybe a bit darker and maybe a bit kinkier than it was. And actually it was rather a sweet romance. There is definitely an age gap, and it's also, interestingly enough, a boyfriend's dad romance where the heroine meets a guy who turns out to be her boyfriend's dad. So she and her boyfriend, for various reasons, end up having to go move in with his dad and live with him. He has a bit of a rocky relationship with his dad, so they don't know each other well, which is why she's never met him before. And she can't deny that, you know, the boyfriend has a really hot dad, and they're spending an awful lot of time together. I was really interested to see how they were going to handle that relationship dynamic, particularly since I'd heard there's no cheating involved, which there isn't. The heroine is not with the boyfriend by the time she gets romantically involved with the dad. I really liked the relationship between Pike and Jordan, and, you know, interesting enough, it wasn't just about smut and sex. It was actually really romantic and very caring, and it was a really interesting relationship. And also, I think the dynamic between the two of them felt much more equal than you would expect. I think she's a woman who has grown up a bit quicker than maybe you'd expect her to. You know, she's used to being responsible, she's used to being independent, and that helps her to feel not massively young in comparison to Pike. I absolutely loved it. It wasn't the book that I ended up thinking it was going to be. It was a little bit gentler, but it was really just a really enjoyable read, and yeah, I was really impressed. It lived up to the hype. So next up, recently there has been a Mafia romance readathon going on, and although I haven't had time to take part or plan a TBR, I have been seeing lots and lots of Mafia romance recommendations, and Mafia romance is a genre that I particularly enjoy, so I've seen a lot of books I thought, I need to read that. One of the books that I came across was King of Beasts. This is a duet, so it's actually King of Beasts 1 and King of Beasts 2. So King of Beasts 1, I really liked. It's a dark romance, and it's kind of a captive situation. The heroine, Katerina, owes the hero... Why can I not remember any names? Rex. So Katerina's dad owes Rex a lot of money, and so ultimately she enters into a contract to him. So this is a very specific BDSM bondage kink, which is shibari or kimbaku, I think you pronounce them as, and it's basically rope bondage. It's very specific. I think if you're not into it, sometimes those scenes can be a little bit repetitive. They're very steamy, definitely, but they are very samey, and they do feature quite a large part of their romantic relationship as it develops. It's not personally my cup of tea, but it didn't hurt the romance. My real problem came from the fact that in the second book, we start to get into proper Mafia territory. There's a lot of twists and turns, there's a lots of backstabbing, a lot of treachery, a lot of who can we trust. And honestly, it got a little bit repetitive for me. It got a little bit... I couldn't quite keep up with who was betraying who and who was on whose side and who could we trust and who could we not trust. I just personally felt like this book could have possibly been condensed down into one book if you'd just taken a lot of repetition out and just had it be a much tighter, much more coherent story. I didn't need the second book. I would have quite happily had this wrapped up after book one, but book one was really fun, and I did like the characters and I did like their relationship dynamic. It was different and it was interesting. So then, still on the Mafia front, I read Run Posey Run by Kate C. Wells, another dark Mafia romance. Does anybody else do this? You just get in a vibe and you just read the same kind of book over and over again. That was me this week. I did think that for a Mafia romance this was a really original setup. So basically we have our heroine. I was literally about to Google the heroine's name and then remembered the book is called Run Posey Run. What do we think the heroine could be called? So we have our heroine Posey, who is the long-term girlfriend of a Mafia boss, Dario, and she has been involved with many a few Mafia men, and bless her, she's been mistreated by most of them. So she's been with Dario for a long time, and she very much considers herself to be in love with him, even though the relationship is quite distant and quite one-sided. He's very much a man about town, he's very dominant, and he rules the roost, and when he wants her around, she's around, and when he doesn't, she's not. So at the very, very beginning of the book, Dario calls her to his office because he has been sent a video of her sleeping with somebody else. She's obviously been recorded, and this video has been shared with basically everybody in the organisation and all that kind of mafia people, and Dario accuses Posey of cheating on him and banishes her from his life, kicks her out, so she goes on the run. And that's kind of where the story starts. This video is actually an historic video. It was taken a long time ago and shared completely without Posey's permission. Dario works this out really, really quickly, which annoyed me because he should have worked this out before he sent her away. He then goes to get her back, and then he tries to rebuild the relationship, but by now she is fed up of being treated like crap by all these mafia men, and she is not going to just lie down and be the good little girl anymore. What I find really interesting about this book is Dario is shown in the beginning of the story, and from kind of things we hear from Posey's point of view, that he wasn't a particularly fantastic lover. Not in that he couldn't be, but that he paid no time and attention to being a good lover for Posey. And there's a lot of kind of discussion in the book about the fact that Posey makes it very easy for these guys because she just does whatever they want, and she gives them whatever they want, even if it's not necessarily what she wants. And so, you know, they all take advantage of that, and they all go along with that, and Dario has been no different. And when he gets her back and when they start to rekindle a relationship, he really has to look at his actions and realise that he's not always been necessarily acting the way she wanted to. And in some ways, you know, Posey has been responsible for some of that because she hasn't asked for any more. She hasn't said to him, I'm not happy with this arrangement, I'm not happy with the way you treat me. She's just gone along with it because she thinks that that will make her men happy. But ultimately, when she does start saying, actually no, you've got to treat me better, he does step up and he does treat her better. So it was a different dynamic. You don't normally see that. Normally all these men are like God's gift to women in bed. So it was quite a different dynamic, and I quite enjoyed that, and I did think it made their relationship, as it developed, go a bit further. Ultimately, I did really enjoy Run Posey Run. It was a very kind of easy mafia romance to read. There wasn't too much mafia business. There was a reasonable amount of mafia action. There was at least one particularly grisly scene I can think of, but not like, it didn't overrule the romance. The romance was definitely the core of the story, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then last up this week, I mean, look, I've been talking for 16 minutes. This is insane. Who knew you could do a video in this short time? Last up this week was Charge, also by Kate C. Wells. I've seen a lot of books recommended by this author recently, so I'm kind of on a roll. Charge is the first of the Steel Bones Motorcycle Club MC romances, and I really, really enjoyed this one. Interesting enough, it was quite light on the MC element. I found that the majority of the action and the storytelling happened around the heroine's lifestyle as opposed to the hero's lifestyle. She is totally not from an MC background. She is from quite a privileged background, but she's had quite a sad, tragic backstory. There are kind of trigger warnings for date rape and for teen pregnancy, and she has had a really, really rough time. She's trying to now live independently with her son, and she's really up against it. Charge steps in and helps look after her, and he is so caring and so lovely, and he's so nice to her, and he just takes care of her, and he so has the best interest at heart. And as she's gradually kind of introduced to the MC lifestyle, he tries to watch out for her and he tries to make sure she's okay. But it was just a really different vibe than what I would normally expect from an MC romance. I really, really enjoyed it. It was incredibly sweet, and I loved the ending. I also really appreciated the fact that the way the author dealt with Charge's ex-relationship, as well as kind of all of the women who would hang around the MC club, it wasn't the traditional kind of cliched way you would expect an MC romance. I don't mind having the bad nasty girlfriend who, you know, you have to put in a place and you have to deal with, but I really liked the fact that this book handled that whole situation just a little bit differently, and the final kind of couple of chapters were just perfect. I really, really enjoyed it. So there you have it. That was a bit quicker, wasn't it? That was all the books that I've read this week. I really like this new weekly wrap-up style. It's so much easier to film and presumably to edit. I'll be back next week with another weekly wrap-up, and if you've got anything that you can recommend that you think I should be reading this week, then leave me a comment in below, and subscribe if you haven't already so that you never miss another upload. Thanks very much. I'll see you soon. Bye!